Welcome to Family Law A to Z with DBD.
Welcome to Family Law A to Z with DBD, a podcast from Pennsylvania-based firm Dischell Bartle-Dooley. This series reflects the collective experience of the firm's family law team, including attorneys Mark Dischell, Elizabeth Billies, and Katie Lynn Daly, who work closely together to provide clear, practical guidance on the legal issues that impact your family and your future. I'm Lisa Mosby, and today we're talking about summer vacation planning in Pennsylvania, custody cases, and how parents can approach the season with clarity and flexibility. Joining me for this conversation is Elizabeth. We call her Liz Billies. She's a partner at Dischell Bartle-Dooley. Liz practices all areas of family law and is known for her thoughtful, collaborative approach to custody and support matters. She focuses on helping families navigate transitions efficiently while keeping long-term stability in mind. Liz, it's great to have you on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You know, Liz, when summer approaches, how should parents begin thinking about their custody arrangements if they already have an order in place?
So the first thing that I always tell my clients to do is read your custody order, read your custody agreement. Even if you think you know what it says, read it again. I cannot tell you how many clients I have who will tell me what their agreement says or their order says. And I say agreement and order kind of interchangeably because most of the time people come to custody agreements that are then made orders of court. So if I use those words interchangeably in this conversation, they are generally the same thing. But people think that they know what it says, and it may not be what it says. That's both my own clients and as well as the other side. So number one thing to do is before we start getting into a dispute, before we start having discussions, let's read the order, let's read the agreement. What does it say about the summer? Some people, there's differences between regular physical custody schedule, which is just what the parties are doing day to day. And then there's often different schedules for holidays and for vacation time. And obviously summer is the vacation time. And so what does your agreement order say about all of those different areas? Some people's summer schedule, their regular schedule, can be the same as their schedule during the school year, but then obviously there's provisions regarding summer and there's provisions regarding holidays. So what I tell people is let's first look at the agreement and and the order, and if there's something that needs to be changed, either permanently or a modification for like a one-off reason, start those discussions with your co-parent early. Because if there is going to be a dispute, let's try to resolve it well before people are making deposits on camp, on vacations. And also, frankly, I can't get into court as quickly as people would like. And so, if you want to dispute a vacation issue that's a week before the vacation is going to start, I'm unlikely going to be able to get a judge to decide on that. So we need to be having those discussions as early as possible.
And then, Liz, how early should summer vacation schedules and adjustments be discussed to help avoid the last-minute conflicts? It's difficult to get into court, as you said.
Exactly. And again, the earlier the better. Some orders, agreements will have a time for example, let's say, we're going to go on a vacation and it says, I need to let my co-parent know of my vacation dates because those vacation dates are generally going to supersede, they're going to take over the regular physical custody schedule of the other parent to some extent. Depending on what your regular schedule is. So you're supposed to let them know 30 days in advance, 60 days in advance, 90 days in advance. First, is there something in your order that says that? We want to make sure we comply with that provision, that notice provision, for a couple of reasons. One, you're more likely to get your co-parent to agree to that, to the modification. And two, if you don't do that and then you try to go into court and say, hey, I want to take this vacation, and they said no, the court may say, well, you didn't comply with the notice provision, so you're not going to get what you want from me. So that's obviously follow the notice provision is most important. I think camps signups are early. people plan their vacations, particularly, for budgeting reasons. They plan those early. So when you're starting to think about camp and about your vacation for the summer, that is a great time to loop your co-parent in. That's a natural time. And again, it will often avoid losing money on deposits too, is kind of a byproduct of that advanced planning, because you have let them know before you did the sign up and before, perhaps the early bird discount has passed, and you're not losing your deposit. So I would say, actually kind of around now, March, April would be a really great time if you're going to try to take a trip of a lifetime over the summer and, to the Galapagos Islands or someplace great like that. Obviously, those are often planned very far in advance. And so loop your co-parent in when you're starting those planning. Just, hey, I want to do this. These are the dates I'm looking at. I have 2 weeks of vacation in our order, and I'm going to use it for this vacation, and get that agreement from them as soon as possible before you start putting, making plans and putting money down.
And then, of course, flexibility, both sides. Flexibility is often important during those summer months. Yeah, yeah. How can parents balance being cooperative while still respecting the structure of the custody agreement?
So there's a judge that I used to be in front of. She's retired now. That used to always say, "What's good for the goose is good for the gander." Said it all the time when it came to flexibility. And if I want someone to be flexible when I need them to be flexible for my schedule, I'm going to have to give it back in return. So I think keeping that in mind of like, I might need this flexibility returned back to me. So when I say no to my co-parent, what's going to be the ripple effect of that no, in terms of just working together in general? And I may be in a bind and I'm going to need them to help me out. And they're going to say, you know what? No, because, you didn't help me out when I needed it. So keeping that in mind is always, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Insert, whatever other mantra phrase you want to use that's similar. I think also too is keeping your kids at the forefront of these discussions and what's in their best interest. In Pennsylvania, the standard for custody is best interest of the child. That is what's in the case law and what's in the code. And often best interest of your children is being flexible with your co-parent. If they want to take an extra day and it's because then your kid gets to go on this trip of a lifetime and your kid's going to have this amazing experience, like that's putting your kid's best interest first. If you have to swap weekends so that your child can go to a summer wedding of a family member that they really enjoy, or the wedding's out of town and your co-parent needs to take some of your days but doesn't want to use them as a vacation, for example, but that kid gets to go be a flower girl or boy in that wedding, and that's a great memory for them. Like, that's in your kid's best interest. So let's keep these kids focused. I think so many times in custody cases, it comes, we're fighting with our co-parent. It's the parents are thinking about, they want to spend time with their kids and they want to spend as much time as possible. But I think sometimes in that fight, and we lose sight of what's important, and it is those kids getting to have those memories. Another thing I often will tell clients, and I'll talk about it when I have conversations like this, is if we were an intact family, would we be having this discussion? Would there be any question your child would get to go to that summer wedding? And maybe turning it the thought or the ask, like looking at it that way, maybe that helps people understand, yes, like it's maybe I'm missing a day with my kids and that's not what the order says. And I don't think that's fair, but my kid's getting this great experience. And you know what, that's more important. And if we were in an intact family, they would be getting that experience. And I don't want them to lose out because we no longer are an intact family. So I think just really centering the children in these discussions helps parents be flexible with one another, because I think it's a natural result of putting the kids first.
It might be my turn this year, but next year you might be doing that trip of a lifetime. So give and take all the time. And communication tends to be more important when routines change. So what approaches or maybe tools, I'm thinking tools, help parents to stay organized and avoid these misunderstandings?
So technology is amazing, right? And as before we started talking, I've been doing this for 20 years. And technology has grown so much in that time period, which is really been to the benefit of custody cases, frankly. So there's a couple things out there that parents can use if they're not already using it. Some of them cost money and some of them don't. I have clients who use a shared Google Calendar. That's free, right? Don't, just put your dates on the calendar immediately, send the emails, just communicate in writing. Because again, putting it in writing is important because if there is a dispute and there's a question of, did I let this person know within the time period I was supposed to let them know, for example, it's in that email, it's in that writing. But having a shared calendar where everyone can look at it on their own time, that's often very helpful. Those are the easy, say free options for tools. There are a lot of co-parenting apps out there. One that I use a lot or recommend clients use a lot is called Our Family Wizard. It is there's an app. There's also, you can use it on your desktop as well. There is a fee to that. Both parents pay for an annual subscription, but that allows people to do a lot of things in the program. You can message each other. You have a shared calendar through that as well. You can share, emergency contact information. You can share medical records, other important documents that way. And it's a really good place. It keeps everything in one spot. And you can see when the person looked at the document, the email or the message that you sent. You can even do video calls through the app. So it's a really good, total package communication tool for co-parents. There are other apps out there, App Close and Talking Parents app, which offer a lot of those same functions, all with just varied, bells and whistles and pay structures. So I recommend those for clients, particularly people who have trouble communicating with their co-parent. Either things get misconstrued or, they say he or she says they never got my message. Just having that specific co-parenting tool can really help that. Also in terms of camps and summer activities for your children, most of these teams and camps now offer portals or apps to control this, so they get the schedule. Everyone gets the schedule if you sign up for the portal. You don't have to be worried about getting the schedule for soccer camp from the other side. So really, technology is definitely your friend nowadays when it comes to custody. And then we also have communication with the children during the summer. Either let's say the summer schedule is different or because of the vacation structure, you're going a long time without seeing your child. And then that can be really tough for parents. And so there's FaceTime, there's Skype, there's Zoom, there's so many ways, and kids are getting cell phones, I think, younger and younger these days. There's so many ways to communicate with your kids while they're not in your care over the summer. And so utilizing those as well can be really can help parents who are struggling with, I'm not seeing my kid for a week because they're on vacation with their other parent.
And you mentioned camps. I think that's a common thing. A lot of kids have different kinds of camps, but with camp or retreats, there's added expense. So how should parents approach that cost sharing if their agreement doesn't clearly address these items?
Sure. So first, I try to have it clearly addressed. That's obviously the number one. Let's try to get that set up as soon as possible. And usually in Pennsylvania, your summer camp is going to be split based on income percentages. So not necessarily 50-50 cost, but based on your income percentages of, if you're making 60% of the total income between the parties, you're going to pay 60% of the camp. But let's say we don't have it in a support order. And that's usually where that would live, that agreement or that order. But let's say it's not in a support order. We don't have anything. The two things you want to think about in splitting costs is, first, you want to get the agreement of the other side before that they are willing to share in the cost. So if you're interested in having your child sign up for a camp, either like a sleepaway camp or a day camp or let's say a sports specific camp, first, let's get I would recommend to my client, get the information. When's the camp? How much is it? When do you have to sign up to get that perhaps early bird discount? Provide that information to the other side. and then ask, will you split this with me? Will you go 50-50 with me, or will you split it some other way? It's hard to get people to agree to things when you don't ask them in advance. So let's ask them in advance before we do the sign up. I think that's the number one thing to do to get someone to agree with you. People don't like to be hit with a cost that they weren't part of the decision in incurring. So that is the number one thing I suggest to my clients. And also make sure you're giving them the information as to how much it costs. Like, don't just say, hey, can we sign up the kids for camp? Because camp costs can vary. I mean, I've seen sleepaway camps that are more than a college tuition. So, let's get all the information to the other side. You're more likely to get them to agree. The other thing that people want to look at is to an eye of reasonableness. Again, going back to my sleepaway example, I have had cases where the camp cost was like $20,000. If you are a family that is your combined income is $100,000, a $20,000 camp is not reasonable. A court is not going to order someone to split that with you. And so let's look at the eye. Reasonableness is also the buzzword here, is what's reasonable given the financial circumstances of the parties. Also, not to be lost in any of this discussion is, does your kid want to do this? I think we got to ask that question too, right? It's like, what does your kid want to do? Like, are we signing the kid up for a camp they don't want to do? And the other parent knows that, they're going to be less likely to want to split that with you. So if there is no order or there's no agreement as to how to split, try to work that out with the other side. Sometimes getting them to pay 50%, even if you want them to pay more, is going to be cheaper than going to court and fighting about it. And then if you are unable to agree, that is something that you can ask as to be part of a support order or a support agreement going forward. But again, remember back to the beginning of this discussion is like timing, right? So you ask them to pay for a camp that you need to sign up in the next 24 hours. Like, I can't get into court and get a court order that person has to split that cost with you. So planning in advance, being reasonable, full transparency of the information is like the top three things I would say to get someone to agree to split the cost with you.
And Liz, here's where I want to wrap this up today. Just one final thought for our listeners. If disagreements begin to escalate, at what point should parents consider involving a mediator or an attorney to help keep the situation from becoming more difficult?
Sure. So I'm also a certified mediator. I'm very pro mediation. I would always say the sooner the better. Again, because if we do need to go to court, or you do want to get in with for a mediation session to address these issues, like, it's a timing problem. You're asking, you're dealing with a third party's schedules, perhaps another lawyer, two lawyers' schedules if it's going to be litigious. So we really want to get this, if it's not going to be resolved, like, start that process sooner rather than later. The court system is unfortunately not waiting around to hear, your issue about your Galapagos Island trip. So get to the lawyer as soon as possible. But remember, I say this to clients and maybe think, oh, this isn't, maybe a good business model, but let's always do a cost benefit analysis of what we're fighting over, and also how much it's going to cost to get that person, for example, to contribute to camp. If it's a $300 camp cost and you want them to pay $150, I would not do a full-blown trial about $150. You will lose money on legal fees, will be more than what you would get from the other person. So always kind of looking to the eye of, like, is this worth my time, money, and effort to fight about this issue? If you want to, however, if you need to litigate an issue or to mediate an issue for the future, I highly recommend it, because you've got many years to have a discussion about summer camp and summer vacations, and you want to get any issues resolved, maybe this year, that will help for future years. So I always, the earlier you can get to a lawyer, the better. They're more likely to have time also to work it out with the other side. So I know it's hard to pay a lawyer when you're trying to pay for everything else, but you will likely save yourself money in the long run if you contact them early rather than, at the last minute. Last minute actually often will cost you more money, because it's just, at that point, it can't be resolved without perhaps court intervention.
Thank you so much for your insights today, Liz. This has been really eye-opening. And to our listeners, thank you all for listening to today's episode of Family Law A to Z with DBD. If you'd like to learn more about Elizabeth Billies or the family law team at Dischell Bartle-Dooley, you can visit dbdlaw.com for resources that address custody planning and co-parenting issues throughout the year. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this episode if you know somebody who could benefit from it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.